me win.
All right, so we are now live. Welcome everybody. This is Civil Discourse with Flat Earth Math, and I've got a nice guest here. His name is Brian, also known as Slick James. Please give him your kindness and Brian. Can you please introduce yourself and just tell us about yourself, and then we'll just kick this thing off.
Sure, yeah. My name is Brian. The Slick James comes from the idea that I'm a musician, so that's just a play on that. But I'm into basically the flat Earth thing. I've gotten into it about a couple years ago, and the reason that I got into it was because I had decided at some point that I was just going to be open, to whatever, and just not just not get into it because I didn't believe in it or anything. So I had an epiphany at some point that I was going to be very, very open. So that's what happened. And somehow, I don't know how it happened, but Flat Earth kind of came across my feed. So one day I said, I'm going to look into this, So I was with a group of people. I said, I'm going to check out this Flat Earth thing. And everybody started giggling. So right at that point, I was like, wow, that's amazing that, everybody thinks that this is funny. Let me see what this is about, because I thought that maybe it was a cult, or something like that. So I said, I'm gonna, get into it. And I started. And I started getting into it. And after a while, I found it getting more and more interesting. So that's where we are now, 18, 19 months later, I guess.
Yeah, it is interesting hearing people's stories about how they get started in the whole flat Earth debate,
Yes.
and it's easy to get sucked down the rabbit hole.
Yes, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, I've gotten into it so much that it's kind of drawn me into it. I didn't really like make a conscious decision that I'm just going to get into it. And I'm not saying at this point I am like either a flat earther or a globe earther. It's just that my views have changed since I got into it. Before I got into it, I had this strict, the earth is a globe. Everything I was taught in school is just how it is. I never questioned it, never got into it. So the position that I take now is that I just don't know anything. So I'm kind of like open.
Right,
It's
right,
right. Yeah.
and that's really the best way to be. It's skepticism is just a really healthy approach to have. A lot of
Yeah.
times people, they look at me and they know that I'm a glober, and they're like, well, you're just a glober because you just believe whatever you're taught,
I
and
got you.
they're coming from the approach that, like, a lot of people they're just taught the globe, and they're not really taught anything more than that.
All right. Right. And I was one of those people. I never knew anything different. And so it's just that after I got into it, I just found it so interesting. What it does for me is that it just really got me thinking. I asked questions that I never thought about before. Things that I never even gave this, a second thought are suddenly very, very interesting. So I've basically, and I spent a lot of time in this. I mean, I'm not talking it's not casual. This really has me absorbed. I may spend maybe an average of 2, 3, 4 hours a day.
Right. Yeah.
So over a period of about 18 months, you hear a lot of stuff. You hear, I've heard every argument, everybody, all the shows. I do a lot of research, not just YouTube. I mean, will go to the library, Google searches. So it's an intense research. It's not just me sitting back listening to videos.
Right. And well, the thing is, though, depending on the video maker, there's some very good quality videos out there. I mean,
Yes,
they tell a very compelling story. The
yes,
first two videos, or one was a video and one was a video series, one was 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Spinning Ball by Eric
yes.
Dubay.
I
I think
saw
that was
that.
literally
Yes,
the first one I watched, and that's like 2 hours long.
right. I
And
saw that.
then I watched the entire series of Flat Earth Clues by Mark Sargent.
I saw
Um,
that.
yeah, and it's like, and it's compelling. It's compelling stuff.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how people can make like a 2 hour documentary and
All right.
put it out there, and people can tune in just like they're watching television.
And I think that one of the things that really draws me into the flat Earth thing is that when you think flat Earth, this is just my perspective of what I get out of it, is that you can be a totally independent person. You can just use yourself. And seeing before you can't do that when it comes to the heliocentric universe. You have to be taught that. That's just not something that you can come up with. So you have to take somebody's word for it. You either can believe it or not. See, where it is with flat earth, you kind of develop your own, because every flat earther is a different personality, because they don't have anything behind them but their own experience and perspective.
Right.
So it's not going to be a universal thing like where, where's the heliocentric model. Well, this is a worldwide taught thing and everybody's on the same page. So that's why you have this weird kind of debate thing going, because you have individuals thinking one way and an establishment thinking another.
Right, right. And it's always interesting to me how people rail on me because they come out with all the conspiracies. I guess I haven't talked about JFK, but they always hit me with 9/11, and they always hit me with the moon landing.
Right,
And I'm extremely knowledgeable about both of those. And then so they're like, well, I just can't believe you believe the official story. And like that's their, so it's like the truth lies somewhere away from the official story. So it's like if it's official, then it has to be suspect.
Right. And see, and I'm one of those kind of people too, because see, I kind of came into it from the conspiracy thing, because the first time I've ever really gotten into conspiracy, the JFK thing was one thing, but the moon landing was the first one, because I saw it on TV. I don't know if you're a little younger than I am.
Right.
Sure.
I was a little younger.
Right. But I was full grown when that came on television. So I saw that. And so I was like, whoa. So I went into work the next day. I said, guys, you know what? I said, this moon landing thing may be a hoax. And everybody at work wanted to jump on me, stump me, call me every kind of name. And I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Right.
I said, I'm just relaying based on what I saw from the show. I'm re-questioning it. It wasn't, so that's where I first started getting into it. And from there, it just became the rabbit hole with I've been through all of them, the David Icke, the Alex Joneses, and then what I would do is I would just think about this stuff, so I would just go over it in my mind and see if I could piece together, and it, and on the one side of it, conspiracies are exciting. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that they're not, because it's like a who done it. It's like, you wouldn't go to a movie to watch Leave It to Beaver. You want to see something exciting, and see that's what makes it compelling. But you have to be careful, because you can't just get drawn up into the hype just because it's exciting, because people play on that excitement and they try to make things exciting that are not really exciting just to draw you in.
Right.
So you have to be careful. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about the conspiracy stories is they are so compelling. You used that word, and that's my favorite word to describe conspiracies. They are compelling. My wife is a budding novelist, and I've done a little bit of the study of writing. I'm not a creative writer, but I like to kind of study sort of movies and sort of like how films are made and how stories are told. And one of the things that's always gotten me is like the trailers. Like I love movie trailers. Gotcha. And there are certain trailers that are just horrible because they tell the whole story. Like when you watch a 3-minute trailer and you get the sense that you just saw the whole movie, that doesn't compel you to want to go to the theater and spend, $12 or whatever it is, but then there are other trailers where they give you a tease. They're like, I'm going to reel you in. And those trailers are few and far between because there's so many, like, I don't know, the example that comes to mind is the Jack Reacher, the second Jack Reacher movie. The opening scene takes place where, Jack Reacher is apparently beating up some guys at some diner. And then there's the sheriff, sheriff is going to come to arrest him. And so he puts him in handcuffs. And then Jack Reacher says,
90 seconds.
In 90 seconds, in 90 seconds, a few things are going to happen. That phone's going to ring, and then you're going to walk out of here in handcuffs. And then he goes like, "Whoa, that's a great story." Well, then the phone starts ringing, and then the sheriff gets this look on his face. Well, you know what the trailer should have done? The trailer should have not stopped there, then come to the next scene. Like, oh, here's what's happening in the movie. But instead, them, actually showing the culmination of that scene, I felt so. It's like, okay, so now we know the first scene of the movie. I mean, that was so stupid of them. That did not compel me to want to watch the movie because they showed me that whole scene. you know.
Right.
But
Right.
back to conspiracies, they make great stories, and
Right.
that's the thing that I don't know. It's like a human psychology. Sort of reel people in with a great story, a very great compelling story, which people will believe.
Right.
But then if you selectively look at the evidence, then you could, kind of get support for this theory.
Yes.
You have to be really selective with the evidence, which is why a careful person really needs to be cautious
Right.
and not just do research in the conspiracy, circles, but go
Right.
beyond.
Right.
You
You
know,
have to be what happens is that you have to be really open. My philosophy is this: life is like a courtroom. You can take either one of three positions. You are either the prosecutor, the defense, or the judge. Every situation in life has one of those three incidences. In other words, you've seen a court like if the prosecution says you're guilty, I don't care what your evidence is, you're guilty, all there is to it. On the defense side, we're innocent, that's all there is to it. I don't care what evidence you have, we're innocent. But the judge is the one that has to be open to both and
right,
stay neutral, a good judge anyway. So what I try to do is stay on that thin line of being a judge and not fall into either side, because if you lock into either side, now you're done. Evidence don't matter. That's why you see all of the arguments and the fights and the bickering, because people are playing prosecution or defense
right,
rather than staying that fine line of being open. So
right,
now I'm going to be honest, at the same time, that's a very tough thing to do, because I find myself drifting. One day I'm a prosecution, one day I'm on a defense, and that's very nerve-wracking to me. So as far as the flat earth thing goes, the reason I've decided to lean towards flat earth is because my philosophy is that there shouldn't be a debate. In other
right.
words,
Okay,
like water. Water is wet. We all know that. So nobody's going to debate whether it's dry. It's just cut and dry. That's it. And my philosophy about the earth is that should be the same way. This should be a cut and dry thing. This shouldn't be something we're talking about. So the only reason that I'm leaning towards flat is because of that. And at the same time, everything is just like it seems. In other words, I have to use my imagination to see that there's a spin. I have to use my imagination for gravity, for movement. But for flat, you don't have to do anything. Everything
right,
is just like it seems. See, so to me, I'm just leaning that way. I'm making a conscious decision that I'm going this way because I feel like science has the ability to not have, to make this debate thing not even be happening, but they're not doing it. So that makes me on the conspiracy side
right,
wonder why.
right. No,
Why are we debating this?
that's a
Yeah.
very, very good point. The thing is, I'm a school teacher. I've been teaching public school for 22 years in the great
Yes.
city of Philadelphia, and kids are not taught critical thinking.
No.
I mean, some teachers teach it.
Right.
I'm not going to
They
say
slip it
it's,
in. They
but
slip it
they,
in.
right, right, right. But
Right.
it's, a lot of it is just, regurgitation of facts.
Right.
Um, the thing is, as a math teacher, I always try to teach kids like skills. Like, of course, there's facts, like there's the times tables. You got to memorize the times tables, but
Right.
there's skills, like how do you solve an
Problem
equation?
solving.
How do you
Problem
solve a
solving.
problem? Right,
Yes.
right. So I try to give my students skills, and not just
Not
facts.
just not
Right.
just fact regurgitation.
Right,
Right.
right,
Right.
right. But the thing is, on the science end, specifically like Earth and space science, I don't think kids are really taught much about like how you would tell that the Earth is a globe, and that's really I see that as a theme in a lot of flat Earth videos where they talk about their upbringing, where anytime flat Earth is mentioned, it's like, oh, those people are so stupid. But
Right.
like, so we were all taught the globe. You were taught the globe. I was taught the globe, but I wasn't
Right.
really taught like,
Any alternatives?
well,
In
it's
other
not that
words,
I wasn't taught alternatives, but I wasn't taught like, how do we know it? Like how can you,
I see what you're saying. Right. Right.
because the thing is, and I totally agree with you about the judge, the prosecution, and the defense, because
Right.
the oftentimes what I see in flat Earth videos is it's the prosecution. They are prosecuting the globe. They are putting the
Exactly.
globe on trial,
On trial.
and they're finding the globe guilty of being a hoax.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You committed a conspiracy crime.
Right, 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 right.
That's the charge.
And
Yes.
and and the thing about the flat Earth videos, is that they are playing the role of prosecution, which is fine. But
Right.
when I talk to flat Earth, people who, they watch these videos, it's almost like they are attending a trial, and let's say it's a multi-week trial with
Right.
opening statements, with evidence, with
Right.
witnesses, and then with cross-examination, and then with closing statements, right? Well, what
Right.
if you attended a multi-week trial, but every single time the defense either said something or brought up witnesses or brought up evidence, you just tuned out?
Shrek. Right.
It's like, so
Right.
if you only paid attention, like you could take almost any trial, like, just walk down to your local courtroom and then just walk into a courtroom, or a court, what is it? A courtroom, walk down to the courthouse and walk in any courtroom and just witness any trial where there's a prosecution and a
Sure.
defense.
Sure.
And whichever side you attend to, meaning pay attention to,
Right.
you're going to vote to either acquit
Exactly.
or convict.
Right. And it doesn't evidence doesn't matter.
Well, because
It's just
all you're seeing is the evidence on one side.
on one
You're
side. That's
seeing
what I
the
mean.
statements on
Right.
one side. You're seeing
Right.
the argument on one side, the
Right.
points that the person's making on one side, and
Right.
you're going to be sympathetic to that side.
Exactly.
And so, so flat Earth versus globe. Yes, the globe is being prosecuted by these flat Earth videos,
and the globe is a defense.
right? But step back. If you step back and either, well, obviously the default is the globe, like, just open up any science textbook and that's going to talk about the globe.
Right. Exactly.
But that's the approach that I try to take with my videos. Most of my videos, the ones where I have experiments / explorations, is I try to get people to get outside, make a measurement in the real world. And I don't tell them, like, oh, you're looking to see this type of outcome. I like, no, just make a measurement, go outside, make a measurement. And then you distill what that information gives you. And then I present flat Earth, globe Earth, like, if the Earth is flat, the evidence should look like this. If the Earth is a globe, the evidence should look like this. Right. So people can make it their own,
Yeah, I saw you on. I watched you with Jaron.
Yeah, that was
so. Yeah, so I saw. As a matter of fact, I saw you in a few different. So I pretty much know where you're coming from. I saw because you actually have some of the flat Earth books. You got Zetetic Astronomy,
right?
And so you at least are going over this stuff. It's not like you're just saying, okay, well, I'm not going to even look at it. So
no, I've studied it. I've really extensively studied flat Earth. And like a lot of people are like, well, you don't even look into it because, I've got the default position. And what they don't understand is that I've got the default position because I've actually gone out and measured it. I can't claim to have measured the globe, but I've definitely gotten scientific evidence for the shape, the shape of the Earth.
Right. Let me give you my take as just on being somebody just from the outside, because I'm not a major player. So somebody from the outside who's seen both sides. I've seen your type and I've seen I'll use you and Red's rhetoric. Okay.
Yeah.
You and Red's rhetoric have a totally different approach to the exact same goal. See, Red's is like the flat Red's is like Nathan on Nathan is to flat Earth like Red's is to globe Earth.
Okay, I can see that.
In other words, yeah, if you say one thing wrong, I am all over you, like a cheap suit. Okay, so that's now the difference with you is that you're on the globe side, but you don't have that pit bull tactic.
Right.
You're very courteous. You don't get in the shouting matches. So I've basically seen all of the different sides. So I kind of understand where everybody's coming from. I try, like I said, my best to, even though I'm leaning towards flat only because I don't like the idea that there's a debate going on at all, I still try to maintain that judge position. In other words, my view can be swayed anytime the evidence changes. I'm not going to lock in, and all of a sudden, just because I'm locked in, if somebody comes along with clear-cut evidence that it's a globe, I'm not going to say, well, I don't care, I'm staying flat, that's all there is to it. No.
Right.
So my philosophy is that when this debate is over and it becomes as obvious as wet water, then I can let it go. But until that time, I have just basically decided to, like I said, just go ahead and join the flat earth side. But I'm not one of those type of people that get all bent out of shape because somebody has a different view. No, I don't feel that. That's just my own personal perspective. I feel that everybody should see the world the way they see it. It's up to them. I'm not mad because you see it your way.
Right,
I,
right.
to me,
And there's a lot of globe earth people who really disagree with my approach, and they, they're very, very free with the word liar,
right,
and
right.
and there's dishonesty, and then there's this concept called intellectual dishonesty, and I think that's really in the eye of the beholder.
Yes.
If somebody doesn't see the evidence the way you see the evidence, it doesn't mean they're lying,
Right, right.
um
It's
so,
perspective. It's individuals have perspective.
right.
They see it. Everybody's experiences are different. So you can't say that a person is lying because they have a different experience.
Right, absolutely.
It's
And I just find that all this acrimony, it's just not helpful. Like, if you're trying to get your point across, like you're trying to express to me that you think that people shouldn't own cats, you think it's
right,
inhumane. You're not
right,
going to get me to listen by screaming at me and by calling me
right.
names. Like, I literally won't even listen to a word you'll say. I'll just rebut everything you say out of
Right.
out of reflex,
Just
but I'm not
right,
even going to listen very carefully. I'm not going to consider your points. If
right.
somebody's screaming at me,
And
um,
that's I got you. And see, and that's the kind of thing like I watch Nathan a lot, and that's the one thing that I have with Nathan. And I wish that he wouldn't do. I wish that he would just be more calm, regardless. But see, but at the same time, he's very real because he came out and said that's in my personality. That's just how I am. It's something that I can't change. I snap. See, so when he says that, see, to me, that's being honest. So
right,
even though that you're the type of person that snap, you're saying I can't help it. That's who I am. See, so I take that as being honest. So even though it's a way that people may not like or be able to relate to, he's being honest about. He's not trying to pretend that he's not that way. So and like I said, I look at everybody and I look at them from their own personal perspective. I
right,
try
right.
to anyway.
Here's an interesting. It's sort of a metaphor that I want you to consider. What
Sure.
if somebody were to tell you that he didn't believe in DNA? And he was like, well, I've never seen a photograph of DNA. Like, there's never been an optical photo of
Right.
DNA.
Right.
And well, guess what? He wins on that point. Like, there has never been an optical photo of DNA, and there never will be. Okay. And,
Right.
DNA is literally a molecule, and optical microscopes. I mean, electron microscopes, maybe, the technology is improving all the time. But
Right.
but something with lenses, something that uses light to bounce light off of something, you can't take a picture of a molecule. And so guess what? That guy wins. That guy wins because if his piece of evidence that he demands that somebody show him an optical photograph of a DNA molecule, well, I'm sorry, but you're never going to be able to produce that evidence. Therefore, this guy, he then
Right.
says, okay, well, DNA doesn't exist. And so it's
Right.
almost like you can't give him like the 10 million pieces of evidence for
No,
DNA,
I
the
got. But see,
crimes that have been solved with DNA and the
I
heredity
got you.
stuff.
Right. And see, and that and it's in those instances where that's when a person becomes their own person. Because just because there you agree with 95%, you can't be scared to not agree with 5%. See, so me, as far as this is my first conversation about DNA, I've never had it before. But
Right.
based on it being the first time, I've never even thought about a picture of it. But as far as DNA goes, I've seen enough to reasonably believe beyond a reasonable doubt that it's real.
Right.
But
Right.
that's all but see, I
But
just go there. I mean, in other words, that's all I could tell you.
right, right, right. But like and then this guy would be like, "Well, you just believe what the government tells you." That's the
Right,
establishment position that
right,
DNA
right,
exists, and like the conspiracy then can just spin out of
right.
control.
See, in those cases, you can't take a broad blanket approach and say, well, just because you feel this about this, then you feel that same way about everything, because every single thing is different. It's
Right.
just like every conspiracy is different. They're
Right.
not all the same. It's not because, well, you believe that conspiracy, so therefore you believe them all and you see them all the same way. No, everything is different, and it all comes down to just critically thinking about it and being very open-minded about every individual situation. In other words, it's like I said, it's like being the perfect judge. The perfect judge never passes judgment.
Right.
He's
What
always right, open.
would you agree that there is a personality type that is more susceptible to believing in conspiracies? So, like
Yes.
Johnny believes that the moon landing didn't exist, and he also believes that JFK was, it's a conspiracy, and he
Yes.
also believes that 9/11, blah blah blah. It's like
See, I'll give you the perfect example. I'm one of those people. See,
okay,
but I realize that about myself.
okay,
See, I know that I'm one of those people that is more into the juice than I am into, because think about a reality, just like you said on Jaron. You said that's extremely boring. There's
right,
no, whatever's considered real anyway. It's no excitement about it. Just like math. Math isn't exciting. Who goes to a party, a math party?
right, right,
Nobody. You go to a party to have fun and be wild, and so that's my take on that. So I definitely am more lean towards that way, but because I know that about myself, it I'm able to keep myself in perspective. Now, if I wasn't aware of that, then that could be a huge problem, because then everything's a conspiracy. I
right,
don't care
right.
what
So
you know.
you're reflective, and you're at least
Yes.
you're a thoughtful conspiracy monger, right?
Yes,
uh,
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so the reason why I brought up the metaphor of the DNA is to segue into flat Earth, and that
Okay.
is that oftentimes flat Earth folks will focus on a piece of evidence that is really, it's either it doesn't show the Earth either way, or they focus on the evidence that only makes it appear as though the Earth is not a globe, like focusing on how far you can see on the horizon. And
Right.
and you said something very interesting about like why is there a debate, like the fact that there is a debate makes you at least question a little bit. And
Right.
I would say it's kind of like DNA. It's kind of like, if the only thing people talked about was the missing photos of DNA, then like
Right.
if that was the number one topic, then lots of people would not believe in DNA. I mean, like, I don't know, I literally just made that up. I don't know if
I got
anybody doesn't believe in DNA.
No, I understand. See, the thing is about flat earthers. Flat earthers are in the position they're in is because they're only individuals. See, there's no real group. They're just a bunch of people with their own little world. It
Right,
just seems like that there's this big clan of people that are all together, but they're not, because they don't really have anything behind them. They've got no budget, no anything, no body. All they can do is just go on so that's why you kind of see that sort of thing where people get tunnel vision, because
right,
all that they don't have laboratories, they don't have anything. All they got is doubt. See, they're working from a place of doubt, and they're trying to build upon that doubt. So when you're doubting something, naturally when a piece of doubt comes up, you cling to it because that's all you got.
right,
See, they
right.
don't they don't they don't have a model, they don't have anything. All they got is doubt about the globe Earth. They have questions.
Right. Well, the thing is, I would argue that a lot of these folks go further than just having doubt. They, I'm pretty sure they've already decided that it's not a globe. Like,
Well, that's where you have your different personalities coming
right,
in. And so that's you're gonna find that, because that's just different people saying, okay, you know what? That's just like the prosecution defense thing. People get to a certain side and they lock in, and that's all there is to it. That's the same thing that you see happening like in the debates. People
right.
are just on that side. I don't care what you say. I'm on this piece of evidence, and that's end of story. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about just real quick, talk about the moon thing, and I'll tell you why I feel about the moon thing the way I
Okay.
do. Okay, after seeing that show, I actually put myself in a position of being an astronaut. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to the moon. And I thought about what I would do if that was me going to the moon. And after careful consideration, I'd be like, no way. There's no way that I am going to attempt to do something that has never been done before, where the chances are 100 to 1 that it's going to go right. and I'm going to go and do that. I don't know anybody in their right mind, especially if you got a family, if
Right.
you got kids and a wife, who is going to put their life on the line to try something that's never been done with 100 to 1 shot that everything will go well. And then on top of that, not only did everything go without a hitch, somebody had a whole lot of confidence that everything was going to go off without a hitch because you televised it live. You took a chance on that thing blowing up as it landed on the moon, and the whole world saw it. Nobody would really do that. See, so these are the things that I just use as thought experiments.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
does that mean that it didn't happen? No. I have no idea. See, I'm just going by what I would think about, and I'm drawing a conclusion based on my own personal, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen because I can't verify it one way or another.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
see what I'm saying? All
Yeah.
I can do is take a position. Right.
And what I would argue then is say, well, what does the evidence say? And that there is a lot of really, really compelling evidence that is not from NASA, that shows that basically everything that they said that they did, they actually did. But in terms of the pilots, the guys that are actually doing this, it's fascinating to read the biographies of the folks who were involved. And there's I don't know if you have Netflix. Are you on
No, I
Netflix?
don't. No.
Oh, okay. So there's an interesting documentary, a commercial documentary, made by Hollywood or whatever. It's called The Last Man on the Moon, and I think it's about it's not Buzz Aldrin. It's I can't remember the guy's name, but he actually divorced. He was married with a kid, and he ended up getting divorced because he was spending too much time, with his with his NASA duties.
Right.
But there are it's a very special kind of individual. Like if you think about testing out a new aircraft, like Boeing builds a new super jumbo jet, and then well, guess what? There has to be a pilot sitting in the pilot seat the very first time. I mean, this thing has like a million moving parts.
I get it. But see, this is the part that I'm having a problem with. Let's say, okay, now remember when Armstrong was testing the lemon, and he had to parachute out of it and it blew up?
Yes, yeah, it was one of those like landing. It was like a simulated LEM. Right. Yeah.
Right. This is where they were testing out the LEM on Earth.
Right.
Now, after that, now this is just me talking. After that, there's no way I am going to trust that this, for the very first attempt on 238,000 miles away, that this thing is going to land. And I've never landed it before. I've never successfully landed this thing, but I'm going to try it for the first time and put my life on the line at the same. See, that's just to me. And I'm not one of those people that is so dedicated to something. So I can't say that there are human beings out there that wouldn't do that because I don't know that. But see, just from my own perspective, by me saying no way, I have to lean towards what I would do. And in that situation, I wouldn't do it. And I don't know of anybody who would. See, so like I said, you take positions for certain reasons that doesn't mean that they're correct. It's just that I wouldn't do that, but it doesn't mean that there's not somebody out there who wouldn't.
Right. The thing is, the desire in the human psyche to push boundaries and to be explorers and to be the people who are busting through those boundaries
on the cutting edge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
It's not my personality. I don't have the drive to be that guy.
To be that, but there are people that do it. We see it all the time.
The first guy to climb Mount Everest. Like how many times have they attempted to climb Mount Everest?
What about the first person that decided to tightrope between two tall buildings without a net? See, so it's not beyond me that there are people out there that will do that. So basically, based on it, I kind of have to retract at least that part of my statement saying that I'm not going to believe it because of that. There has to be some other reason, because people will overlook that kind of stuff. So it has to be for other reasons that I'm not going to. There's a whole,
but before we jump into and let's talk about some flat Earth stuff.
Sure,
but I just saw a crazy stunt. Can you imagine a guy jumping out of an airplane without a parachute? Jumping out of an airplane, not like jumping into a swimming pool and the airplane is only a few feet high. No, I mean the airplane is like several miles high. Jumps out of the airplane without a parachute. you know, I actually saw recently, I saw two stunts. One was, I guess it was is it Daredevil, or is it that stunt show on MTV that Johnny Knoxville, and you know, where these guys would just do these crazy stunts. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Jackass. So one of the guys, and the stunt was that there was a guy who was going to jump out of the airplane without a parachute, but then there was another guy jumping out with him, and then they would link up, and then they would tether themselves together. But he literally left the airplane without a parachute, you know? And it's like, just think about that. You're in an airplane and you're jumping out of the airplane, and you personally do not have the means to get down safely.
What was his end game?
Well, I mean, it was a stunt. It was just to see if they could do it, and they did it, you know. And they had cameramen filming the whole thing, and you know what the guy did is he had like a little harness around his waist and his legs. Like if you've ever gone parachuting or even rappelling, you know, like around your hips is a key center point. And so he did have a harness that was all sort of, you know, inside of his shorts, like, but that's it. So the guy who was going to be, you know, his lifeline had like a, you know, carabiner or something. And, you know, they had some way of hooking themselves together. So, you know, they ultimately landed two men with one parachute, but he left the aircraft with no parachute and with no tether, and, you know, and then the other stunt. Yeah. Well, the other stunt I saw is even crazier, like 1,000 times more dangerous. He left an airplane with no parachute and with nobody to link up with. And his end game was to land in a huge net. It looked kind of like a trampoline, or, you know, it's a safety net, kind of like the airbags that they use with stuntmen, but it looked like a net, like a you know, made of like mesh. And the thing is, he had to just guide with his body. You know, he had to guide with his body, you know, sort of body surf, and just, you know, get himself all lined up. And then at the very, very last second, he flipped so that he was able to land in the net on his back.
And I get it. What you're saying is the moral of that is there are people that do cutting edge stuff. And in order to, and the reason that they do it is because of that being on a cutting edge. The glory of the cutting edge gives you the strength to do it. So yes, I get that.
And then the interesting thing about the guy who landed in that net is when they brought the net down and the guy kind of came rolling out of the net, the very, very first thing that happened is this woman comes running up holding a baby, kissing him and hugging him. And it's like, oh, I guess that's his wife and his kid.
And he's got a family.
So it's like, I couldn't believe, you know, because like
he would do that.
If he was just a little bit off, like in his judgment, you know, like he would have been killed just instantly. But he did that with a wife and kid there. So anyway,
and that means that it's okay.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that just furtherly shows that even not only is he on the cutting edge, but so is she.
Yeah,
she has to be on the cutting edge too in order to allow it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So flat Earth stuff.
Yes, flat.
The thing about our view of the Earth is that I always say to people, the Earth appears to be flat, and we seem to be not moving. So it's like, I agree with you there. You know, you go to the beach and you see a flat horizon. You fly in an airplane, you see a flat horizon. You look down at the water from 40,000 feet, and the water appears flat.
No tilt, no nothing.
No tilt, no nothing. You know, no sense of motion. You know.
Just a slight breeze.
Right. So it's like, I'm with you there. It's like, I 100% agree. And then I said, well, let's run the numbers, like the heliocentric model. You know, the Earth is not just a spinning ball. In fact, the Earth is not a spinning ball. It's a freaking planet, and it's moving extraordinarily slowly. And people will say, oh, it's 1,000 miles an hour. And it's like, well,
I got it.
It's comparable a very slow size. Rotation, right? Very comparable to the size of a planet. 1,000 miles an hour at the equator is actually extremely slow.
But see, now think about, but that point right there, even at the equator, isn't that only slow in the middle? What at the outer edge? Isn't that a whole different story than right in the middle where it would appear slow?
Well, no, I mean, standing on the equator is where you're going to be doing 1,000 miles an hour. It's actually over 1,000. So, you know, a person, an observer standing on the Earth's equator, he's doing 1,000 miles an hour around the
Right.
Earth's axis.
And,
And that's where people
right.
say, oh, like, how come it's not a big hurricane and all that kind of stuff? Or shouldn't you feel it,
Right. And see, and that's what, see, the argument there is that the reason they don't see it as slow is because what they say is that on the outer edge, it is
Right,
fast,
right,
even though
right.
it, right.
Yeah, they call the
In other
edge
words, and they, yes, and they use the propeller of a jet engine to show the difference, like if this edge of this
Right, right.
ever, right.
Yeah.
So
So
that argument is kind of tough to
yeah,
buy
it
because
is tough, except for the fact that they don't run the numbers. Like there's two ways to defeat that argument. One is they always insist on using miles per hour. They don't like using RPM, because if they use RPM, which is the way we talk about anything else that's rotating,
sure,
that it destroys their argument, because it's 0.0007 RPM, which is
right.
really slow.
It's like the hands on the clock.
It's actually twice as
Half
slow
as
as the hour
fast, right?
hand, right? Twice
Exactly.
as slow as the hour hand,
Yes.
which is extremely slow. So
Yes.
that, so they won't use RPM. They only use miles per hour. Well, then the second thing I will say is, like, okay, so let's say you're doing 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, like, I'm not going to say you're not doing 1,000 miles an hour. That's the truth. Somebody in the equator is doing 1,000 miles an hour around the Earth's axis. Let's
Right.
run the numbers. And
Right.
it's 1,000 miles an hour, but he's also 4,000 miles away from the axis. It's like the center of rotation is 4,000 miles away. So 1,000 miles an hour isn't really that big. It's like if you had a turntable and it was like 4 feet wide, and you were doing 1 foot per hour, around the turntable. Like 1 foot per hour for a 4 foot or 4 foot radius turntable is not, that's not very fast.
Right. I think the thing that's hard to see there is that on the other side of that, if you were in your car and you were on the equator and you drove 1,000 miles in 1 hour, it's this, you would cover the same distance.
You would
And see, and
cover.
that's what's hard to grasp.
Right.
I think that's what people have trouble with, because that's why they see the miles per hour. Because when you just look at it from a different angle, it is fast. And then on the angle that you're talking about, wow, that is slow.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So what
Right.
you have is these contradictory of terms that makes it hard to pick. Well, which one is it? I don't know.
Right. No, I 100% agree with you. But what I would say is that they don't look at the terms using perspective. I mean, and there's that word again. If you pull them out of perspective, like, for example, driving 1,000 miles an hour, well, that means you're literally, the wind is pushing past your car at 1,000 miles an hour. And you're going faster than the speed of sound, because you're traveling through air at 1,000 miles an hour. So it's like, it's not really comparable, because the Earth is not traveling through air,
Now, this would be my counter to that. Well, so this is what I would say to the slow moving thing. So basically, when you talk about it moving so slow, then my philosophy could say, well, then maybe it's not even, why even move at all? If it's moving so slow that it seems like it's stopped, then maybe it is stopped. Because what's the difference between so slow and not moving at all? Very little.
Right.
See, so that's where you can kind of get the argument. So it's not moving. It's still, if it's that slow, then why move?
Right. Or I would turn that around. I would say, if it's so slow that you can't tell, then let's go back to the judge and
I got you.
thing.
Right.
It's like, literally, the evidence could go either way.
Right.
Like,
so
the perpetrator was driving a white pickup truck. Here we have this defendant. He owns a white pickup truck. Well, yes, he could be the perpetrator, or he could just simply own a white pickup. You literally can't use that piece of information. But it could literally go either way.
Now, being as a judge, here's where the argument would come in, and this is where you're going to see a lot of flat earthers at. In order to believe that the world is turning, I have to trust somebody, because I can't verify that for myself. Now, we agree on that, correct?
Well,
in other words,
I would say that there are ways of testing it, but yes, overall, yes.
Right. You need some kind of education, because it's a lot involved. But when it comes to flat earth, you can be absolutely never attended a day of school in your entire life, never even heard a word spoken, and you can say, okay, this world is flat, nothing's going on, it's perfectly still. There's these things in the sky are nothing but lights, and that's pretty much it. They revolve around me,
Right.
and that's pretty much it. And see, so the point that I'm making is, to be in the flat earth, all you need is yourself. In order to understand the heliocentric model, you have to depend on somebody telling you what's going on, because
Uh,
your observation is none of that. See,
well,
so that's the difference. What you're
right,
seeing is
right.
you're seeing people that want to be independent and don't want, because I'm one of those people. I want to depend on me. I don't want to depend on an establishment for answers.
Right.
I don't, just like math. I don't want to go to math for the answers. I want to just be able to look out my window and say, okay, I got
Okay,
it.
I am totally with you. That, you know, that there's oftentimes people say, well, you know, established science, you know, they're the ones with the $1 billion budgets, and they're the ones that have had 500 years
They're
to
calling
work
the
on this,
shots.
to work on
Right.
this globe lie. You know, they've
Right.
been working on this lie for 500 years, and we have nothing. We have no budget. You know, we have
No.
no
Right.
scientific equipment. So what
No.
I would say to that, and that's really the genesis of my channel.
Hmm.
And I've shared this story before, but I'll share it with you. I used to listen to a lot of Mark Sargent's, I guess it was Strange World
Yes.
shows. I guess it's like a radio show he's got, and he tells the story. So I'm just going to be paraphrasing. This is how I remember him telling the story. He was
Right.
speaking to a scientist, and of course the scientist was heliocentric, you know, and Mark asked the scientist, "How would you be able to prove to me that the Earth was a globe?"
Right. I
And
remember
the
that.
and the guy, you know, I guess he paused for a moment. He's like, "Well, I guess I'd have to just shoot you up in a rocket,
I
you know?
remember that.
Then
Right.
have you see it, you know, see it for yourself." And that little snippet of conversation really stuck with me. And
Hmm.
it's like, you know, because like I'm aware of the flat Earth debate. I'm aware that there are people who believe the Earth is flat, and I'm also aware that, you know, other people like me know it's
Hmm.
a globe. And so it's like, well, how could I get through to somebody without spending, you know, $1 million to launch somebody into space on a rocket? And that's really where my channel started. Is I started brainstorming things that
But Charles,
people could do. Go
but
ahead.
see, here's the thing that happens, Charles. Now, with that statement that you just made, a person like me, what you just said, you knew it was a globe. Well, then I would ask you that same question. How do you know that? Because
Good.
unless you've been out in space yourself, you don't really know. What you do is you believe based on the evidence that's been presented to you, but you don't really know because you haven't been on a rocket ship yourself. See what I'm saying? So
Right.
that's the argument that you're going to get back when
Right.
you say, I know it's a globe, because
Yeah.
somebody's going to say, well, how do you know that?
Well, the thing is, the thing is, the Earth could either be a globe or we could be in a simulation.
It could be a
Right?
simulation,
Could be a
sure.
simulation. But I could tell you most assuredly that the evidence that I've personally collected, in addition to, you know, the gigabytes of data that's out there collected by other people, you know, all the evidence, you know, speaks one language, you know, and
Right.
that's globe. So I know that we live on a globe, not because I've been shot into a rocket and I've physically seen the globe with my own eyes, but I've
But
actually designed tests, and that's the thing that people don't understand. They just think I'm establishment, you know, like I just am, you know, parroting what I've been told. I've actually designed tests that, it's almost like you've heard the phrase torture test, like when they're designing a new piece of equipment and it's you know, it's supposed to be like a toy used by toddlers. Well, you know, you got to chuck the thing out of, you know, the second story window, and it needs to survive because that's what toddlers do.
right,
So you torture test it. You know, you freeze it, you burn it, you boil it, you throw it down the stairs because that's what toddlers do.
right.
So I've actually torture tested the globe. I've actually designed things that didn't even make sense to me when I was designing them,
But
and
Charles,
and
but,
and they
but
still
before you
came
go
out.
on,
Sure,
okay, but let me just interject real quick.
sure.
But now, in order for you to design those tests that you design, you have to be a pretty intelligent, well-educated person to do that. Am I right?
Yeah,
You can't you
like
can't just be, in other words, you can't just
sundial
be
one was
somebody. Yeah, you can't be a high school dropout who smokes weed all day and come up with those experiments that you came up with. So you
well,
have to be intelligent to do that. And the thing is,
right.
not everybody's on that level. See, somebody like me, I couldn't do no more of an experiment than to look out this window. And that's about as much as my mind can handle. See, so
Okay.
I'm not in a position to go any farther than that. So this, the reason I'm saying is this is just for both of our education and who's ever listening. This is some of the arguments that you're going up against. We are dumb. And there are people out there that is all we have is dumb. We don't have the experience and the ability to think any farther than beyond looking out the window and seeing what we see. And what we want to do is to be able to have that as enough to be able to grasp the world that we live in. See, so this is why you see some flat earthers, because we are dumb people. We are not geniuses. We don't
Right.
have that. We don't have high
Give
IQ.
give
Some of
yourself
us.
more credit. Give yourself
No,
more
no,
credit. So
no. What I'm saying is when I say that, when I mean scientifically, we don't have that high of an IQ mathematically or or astronomy wise. In other words, I took an astronomy course, I passed it, but I can't grasp all that stuff with the astronomical units, the parsecs, the parallax, and
right,
the stars being thousands of light years away and all that. See,
right,
that's
right.
too much for me. I hear it and I get it, but I can't. I have to believe it. I can't just come up in I don't have the mind to process all that. So I can either take your word for it or not. See, on the flat earth side, there's no taking anybody's word for anything. Everything is just like it seems. So it's a sense of being in your own space without anybody having to show you what's going on. So I guess the only thing that I'm saying is that there is no right and wrong here. It's just all about perception. So my perception of the earth is flat is because that's the only thing I have the ability to process. I
Okay.
have to believe in order to go farther than that.
I'm gonna disagree with you there
It's
in
okay.
that you have way more abilities in the flat earth debate, way more abilities than you're giving yourself credit for. Because what you're talking about looking out the window, I totally get it. All right.
Yes.
I look out the window, like my school is sort of it's on a little bit of a rise, and where I have my cubicle, my office is on the third floor, and
Yes.
I look out, and there's this beautiful picture window in the break room, and
Right.
you could see the horizon. It's made of trees. I mean, it's North Philadelphia,
Right.
and it's a tree horizon, but the trees are like all about the same height,
Right.
being like a cityscape. But I see the horizon, and it's just like I just look up there, and I'm like, look, I'm just looking at this horizon, and it's absolutely flat, And so
Right.
I'm with you about the looking out the window, but here's where I'm going to jump in. I'm going to say
Sure.
you have the ability to make careful observations. So what you've been doing has been making casual observations, and there's nothing wrong with that. But now with a little bit of instruction, you could make careful observations. So the one that you don't need, any real training is a shadow stick sundial. And people always, joke at me about toothpicks in a pizza box, because it literally can be a toothpick stuck in a pizza box. And so what I tell people with the shadow stick sundial is,
Now let me just jump in real quick. Now that's a very simple experiment that anybody could do, correct?
yes.
Okay, Charles, this is the question. If that's the case, why are we having this debate? Why is there this raging debate going on when the answer is so simple?
Because
See,
people
that's
don't.
because right, but or either that, or maybe the answer is just not that simple. See, it's simple to you in your mind because you have a certain perspective. You see it as something that anybody can do, and it's real simple. But somebody on the outside is looking at doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. See, so now it's which one is right,
Right.
you or the person that it doesn't see, and that's where this thing gets really involved, and it's not a very easy thing. I've been into this for a couple of years,
Right.
and it's very involved. There is no really simple way to just say, oh, okay, so this is like this. I'll give you an example. One of the things that I struggle with is I look in the sky, and this is not something that I prove myself, but nobody's debating that there are planets out there that moons orbit them.
Right.
See, nobody's fighting that. So that's telling me that, well, nobody's debating that. So maybe that does happen. So I have to give that a plus on the heliocentric side, because we have a moon. And it's very possible that moon could be orbiting us just like the moons orbit Jupiter.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So
Right.
but it's just points scored. In other words, well, that's a point for this side, and a loss for this side. But the game isn't over. So it's always a back and forth going on, because unless it's a cut and dry thing where this debate thing just totally ends, it's never going to end. It has
Yeah.
to be a
Yeah.
certain point where nobody's questioning it anymore. And until that point happens, you're going to have the prosecution and a defense. And this is going to just keep on going on. And you'll
Well,
find individuals on one side or the other.
right, right, right. Well, the thing is, you could take this to the extreme. You could take something that is so plainly obvious, and that could turn into a debate point because somebody doesn't believe it. So, for example, on that debate show that you mentioned earlier, there is
Yes.
a person who does not
Mhm.
believe that the sun produces light, and
I got you. I've heard that.
so when we see, it's a sunny day, you look up in the sky, you see
Right.
this really bright spot in the sky. It's just a theory that is actually the source of the light. And the
Right.
person actually called it the epicenter
I know what you're
of
talking about.
illumination.
Right. Now from an outsider looking in, and this is what I would do when I hear something like that. All I do is say, okay, that's another possibility. See, what
Right.
I do is when I hear something like that, I don't go one way or the other.
Right.
All I say is that here's another perspective. My perspective, I never thought about it before, so I can't say it's my perspective, but I won't dismiss it
Right.
because it's somebody else's perspective. And I'll just say, okay, I hear you. I don't go either way on it, but I hear you. Just like
Right.
the flat earth thing. In other words, I hear you. I'm not going to laugh or go either way. If you say something, just like what you're saying, everything that you said to me tonight, I haven't judged one way or another. It's like, I hear you. I'm
Right.
not knocking it. I'm not saying it's this. I hear it. It's another perspective that goes into the thought process. And that's how I think that it should be approached basically by everybody.
Yeah,
It's like, I hear you.
you're absolutely right.
Right.
What I've found is that most of at least the content producers, I mean, if you're going out there and you're making flat Earth videos,
Right.
you're definitely
You're out there. Right.
you're out there. You're
You're
not
in it.
you're not a fence sitter. The fence sitters
Right.
don't make flat Earth videos.
Right.
Now the thing is, what I found that the flat Earth videos that are being made, they focus either on observations that could go either way. Like I said, the guy with the white pickup truck, it isn't you're not going to throw the guy in jail for having a white pickup truck when the perpetrator had a white pickup truck. So staring out at the horizon and looking at some things on the horizon, it's like it really could go either way. Right.
And that's when it comes down to the individual.
Right.
Does the individual have enough in him to discern what's going on, what to take seriously, what to kind of let go through the, by the way.
So what I try to encourage folks to do, and I know you said that, you're downplaying, how the intelligence required to come up with these tests, but it's like if you decided to make a careful study of the sky, you could actually learn a lot. The one I just mentioned was the sundial. It's like all you got to do is mark shadows all day, and then if you did that on the equinox, you would be possibly very surprised by what you see. It's something that is completely, like literally no flat earther ever, in my experience, has explained the path of the sun on the equinox.
I get it. I've heard that argument and I basically understand it. But see, from the other side, there's another experiment that you can do, and it's even easier. I could just look up and there it is. No thought. No, see, that's just another perception that's out there.
Sure.
See, so that the only thing that I'm saying is you're not wrong in what you're saying with the shadows thing. You could definitely probably go that route and understand that, okay, this is definitive. But you also can look up in the sky and say, you know what, this is just like it looks. And that's definitive as well. See, so each argument has its own thing to offer,
So getting back to the white pickup truck example, because I'm not like I'm trying to beat a metaphor to death, but like, so you have a witness, and the witness says, I saw a white pickup truck speeding away from the scene of the crime.
Yes.
And then we've got a guy, he's accused of this crime. He owns a white pickup truck. And then the person's just like, well, that's all the evidence I need. All I need to know is that he has a white pickup truck. And then that's going to settle it for me. Well, then the defense attorney is going to say, no, they actually captured the the license plate. There was an ATM video camera, right outside the store or something, and so
Right.
it captured the whole scene, and it took a picture of the guy's license plate. And guess what? It's not the
Right.
same. It's not the same pickup truck. The make and
Sure.
model was slightly different. It was a Toyota instead of a Ford, And so it's
Right.
like, on the one hand, the person who just says, you know what, all I need to know is that it's a white pickup truck. That's good enough for me.
Right.
But
now,
if you look at
now
the details
thing is,
are what,
all right. And I understand it. And see, now what I would come back at that same scenario with is, okay, there was a white pickup truck. Where I am is that we haven't found anything else, but we saw it was a white pickup truck. The details we don't know, because that's all we saw was a pickup truck pass, but the pickup truck is now gone out of sight. So we don't have any more details. All I got was that initial sight of the truck, and that's all anybody knows.
Right.
So my point is, it's not that that's the only thing that I don't want to see anything else. The thing is that maybe that's all there is to see, and there are no other details. And I think that's why the debate is going on. Because if I got to a point where, okay, all of a sudden I saw with clear, flat out evidence that the earth is a globe, everybody would see the same thing and debate would be over. You're not going to have one individual see it and thousands of other people not get it. Everybody has to get it at the same time for there not to be a reasonable doubt.
Right. Oh, and we have to wrap this up soon. I totally was not
sure.
thinking
No, this was great.
But what I would say is, like, what's the difference between the two white pickup truck observations? One was a casual observation. The other was a detailed observation. And what I would say,
but you have to have that detailed observation.
Right. So here's my rebuttal. Okay. In terms of the shape of the earth, in terms of the observations we could make, the sun rises and sets every day. The moon rises and sets every day. The stars rotate every day. And so if you were to casually look up and I say, well, it looks like the stars are rotating around me. Well, that's a casual observation. Well, now I say, take it to the next level and make careful observations. Make careful observations of the sun, moon, and stars. And you're going to find that, like, one of the theories for the shape of the earth is just going to be demolished. It's like, it literally is incompatible with the absolute observations that you carefully make with your own eyes.
Right. And I understand that. And like I said, what you're going to have as a rebuttal to that is that you can just look up in the sky and see that observation. See, that's another perspective. No measurements, no anything. It's just as it seems. It's just another argument.
Right.
You understand? So that's why, go ahead.
Well, no, you said something very important. You said until it's clear to everybody, then the debate's going to continue. Well, that's kind of like saying, unless we see photographs of DNA on the front page of the newspaper, no one's going to believe it. And it's like, well, you're setting yourself up for failure, because if you're standing on a planet that's 24,900 miles in circumference, you're not going to see a planet. Like, you're going to see a flat plane from your perspective. You're going to see a flat plane. Everything you could experience is going to be flat plane, flat water, flat horizon, non-moving. Right.
And right now, this is what my rebuttal would be. That's okay. In other words, let's use me for an example. If the earth is really, really a globe, but I never see that, and all I see is flat because that's as far as my mind can take me, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, sure.
That's my philosophy.
Yes, because it's a free country. People are free to believe. Absolutely.
You have to, if that's what works for you, it's one of those things.
Yeah,
you have to do what works. You have to do what works for you.
So Brian, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to have this chat with me. And I do try to keep these things short. And what I'm going to say, I got some really nice comments in the chat. If you want to have another one of these in a future date, because I think we just scratched the surface, is what I think.
Yes. Anytime. It could, and like I said, and my views has changed after I've talked to you personally. I don't have the same opinion of you anymore. I just thought that you were another glober pretending to be nice, and I was siding. That's why I made the comments that I made. But I kind of apologize after talking to you. I have a different point of view.
Well, I appreciate that. So, Brian, would you like to say any final words to our audience, and then we'll stop our broadcast?
Sure. Just very quickly. It's like I said, everything to me is just my own personal. I only have my own thoughts in my own mind. I don't believe anybody else should feel any kind of way like I do. I think everybody should express themselves and say what they feel. And I also think that everybody else should just hear it. You don't have to believe it or not. Just hear it, because that's what we do as human beings. We express. And that's all this is. Everybody's just expressing themselves, and we should all appreciate that.
I agree with you 100%. Because like the thing is, we are all people, and
We're
that's one
just
of the things
people.
that can be
Right.
disappointing at times in the flat Earth debate is the acrimony. Because
Right.
like the other guy, you wouldn't be talking to him if you were sitting across a table at a restaurant. You wouldn't be talking like that for certain these people who are just screaming off their.
Well, I get it, and like I
So
said, I wish some of that screaming wouldn't happen, because every
right,
time it does, I got to go turn my stereo down because I don't want the neighbors to think I'm
right,
arguing with somebody. So I get that. I understand that, So
so
believe me, I understand both sides, because I'm trying to stay
right,
very
right.
into, trying to keep my ears open and not be too judgmental.
Absolutely. All right. And
All right,
Brian,
sir.
I'm going to hit the stop broadcast, and you and I
You
can
got it. Sure.
we'll still be in the hangout. So
Okay.
to the audience, I really appreciate those people who are participating in the chat, and you guys were keeping it civil. I appreciate the conversation you guys were having. Thank you very much for attending, and hope you have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.